you begin to realize that your world is not responding to the noise around you, but to the inner assumptions you carry quietly, deliberately within. The secret is this: your imagination is God within you. It is the creative force shaping every event, every person, every outcome in your life. Once you grasp this, truly grasp it, you stop talking so much. You stop defending your dreams, trying to convince others of your vision or seeking validation from the world outside. Why would you need confirmation when the real work is done in stillness? Creation is finished. All that you desire already exists in a dimension unseen by the eyes, but fully known by consciousness. To speak of it prematurely, to share your seed before it has taken root, is to dilute your own power. The moment you name it out loud, you invite contradiction. Others will speak from their own limitations, and if you are not rooted deeply enough, their doubt becomes your distraction. Keep your mouth shut, not out of fear but out of reverence. What you imagine in secret will declare itself in public. What you assume in silence will echo through the chambers of your life as form, fact, and experience. The world will bow, not because you shouted your dreams, but because you walked in the quiet confidence that they are already real. You don't owe anyone your process. You don't need to explain your faith to minds that haven't seen what you've seen in the stillness of your own being. Speak to yourself in the language of certainty. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Dwell in the end and let the outer world rearrange itself accordingly. Let your results speak for you, not your words. Once you know this secret, that the unseen creates the seen, that the imaginal act is the source of all manifestation, you will treat your thoughts like sacred fire. You will tend them, not toss them carelessly. You will become intentional with your inner speech and silent with your outer one. Because now you understand. The world listens best when you speak through demonstration, not declaration. Everything begins in the unseen realm of imagination. Long before a result shows up in your physical world, it is conceived, shaped, and nurtured within the invisible chambers of your mind. This is not just a poetic idea, it is the foundational truth of reality. Your imagination is not some fleeting daydream or idle fantasy. It is the divine creative force operating within you, through you, as you. The world around you is nothing more than a mirror reflecting the persistent images you hold within your consciousness. Whether you are aware of it or not, every condition of your life is the echo of your inner assumptions. You may think the world responds to your actions, your efforts, or even your words, but in truth, the world responds to your inner state, the feelings and beliefs you consistently entertain. This is why two people can be in the same situation, face the same external facts, and yet experience radically different outcomes. One sees failure and limitation, and therefore confirms that belief through their lived experience. The other sees possibility and fulfillment, and without struggle, begins to walk into a reality shaped by those inner visions. The difference is not in luck or talent.
This Freedom Day with...
To understand this is to step into a level of freedom few ever reach. No longer are you a victim of circumstance. You are no longer waiting on the world to change for you to feel better or be better. Instead, you become aware that everything you could ever desire, love, peace, success, healing, already exists in you. Not in a theoretical way, but in the most practical and powerful way possible. You carry within you the seed of every experience, and your imagination is the soil in which it grows. The mistake most people make is looking out there, to others, to situations, to the opinions and actions of the external world for validation, for proof, for permission. But nothing out there can truly create anything new. The outer world only reflects what is already established within. That is why change must begin at the imaginal level. If you want to see something different in your life, you must dare to imagine it first, clearly, boldly, and consistently, without needing to see immediate evidence. This is not wishful thinking. This is spiritual law. The imaginal act is a causative act. What you imagine and believe with feeling is already on its way to becoming visible. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to manipulate or force it. You have to accept it inwardly, and in that acceptance, reality reshapes itself to reflect your inner truth. The world rearranges, not because you screamed the loudest, but because your inner assumption became more real to you than the external facts. This is the silent power most never tap into because they are too busy reacting to what is. They see what appears and say this is real and then wonder why they keep getting more of the same. But what is visible is always the fruit of what was once invisible. Every outcome you now face was once just a thought, a belief, a feeling that you entertained and accepted. Whether you were conscious of it or not, you gave it life by your attention. The more you repeated it, the more you assumed it to be true, the more it had no choice but to appear in form. And so, the invitation is this: use your imagination deliberately. Treat it not as a toy, but as a tool. When you imagine something, you are not just playing with possibility. You are planting seeds in the garden of your reality. Every thought impregnated with belief begins the process of manifestation. So you must choose wisely. Ask yourself, what am I imagining consistently? What inner scenes do I replay over and over again? Do I live more in worry or in wonder? In fear or in faith? Because whatever inner world you build, that will be the world you walk into. This is not always easy, especially when the facts of life seem to scream otherwise. But the facts are not final. They are simply frozen beliefs, hardened into form. You can melt them down with new assumptions. You can imagine beyond your current situation and call forth a new reality. The power is not in the world, it is in you. Your imagination is not separate from life. It is the source of it. The moment you understand this, you will no longer live passively. You will no longer wait for things to change. You will change your mind, and the world will follow. When you begin to use your imagination consciously, you also begin to see that you are not bound by the past. You are not limited by what has been. You are free in every moment to imagine something entirely new. The past only continues to exist if you continue to imagine it. But the future is always open to be rewritten by your present state of mind. What you imagine today with feeling becomes the experience of tomorrow. And so imagination is not only a mirror, it is a portal. Through it, you step into the life you dare to envision. And here is the beauty of it. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need conditions to be perfect. You simply need to turn inward and begin. Start by imagining the end. What does it feel like to already be who you desire to be? What does it look like, sound like, taste like to already live in the fulfillment of your dream? Dwell in that state. Saturate yourself in it. Let it become more familiar than the old story. Do this with persistence and faith, and you will prove to yourself that imagination creates reality. Not just sometimes, not just for the lucky few, but always. Quietly, faithfully, without fail. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. When you begin to understand the creative power of your imagination, you naturally begin to protect it. You no longer feel the need to share every idea, every vision, or every hope with others because you realize most people do not see as you do. They live according to what is visible. They believe only in what can be measured and proven. But you have begun to see through a different lens. The lens of inner knowing. You have discovered that imagination is the root of all experience. And with that discovery comes a deep respect for the process of creation. Silence becomes a sacred space where the seed of your desire can germinate without interference. When you share your vision prematurely, you expose it to the beliefs, fears, and doubts of others. Even those who love you may speak from limitation, not because they intend harm, but because their inner world does not match yours. They may not understand what it means to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to live from the end, or to walk by faith, not by sight. And so, when you speak of your desire, they unconsciously project their own disbelief. They question, they doubt, they advise you to be realistic. But realism is just conformity to outer facts. And facts are only the crystallization of former assumptions. If you begin to waver under their influence, your own faith begins to falter and the creative power of your assumption weakens. To protect your inner world is to honor your power. Silence is not about hiding, it is about guarding the sacred. When a seed is planted in the soil, we do not dig it up every day to check its progress. We water it, we protect it from harsh conditions, we trust the invisible process. In the same way, when you plant a desire in imagination, you must trust its unfolding. You must give it the nourishment of attention, the warmth of belief, and the quiet strength of patience. Words spoken too soon are like hands that dig up the seed before it takes root. The more you grow in inner awareness, the more you realize that most of the work is done in stillness. It is in silence that the assumption deepens, the vision clarifies, and the inner world rearranges. You become less reactive to what is happening outside because you know the truth of what is forming within. You do not argue with appearances. You do not need to convince others. You simply persist in the inner knowing that what you have imagined is already yours. This silence also gives you sovereignty. When you keep your process to yourself, you stay centered in your own authority. You are no longer seeking validation. You are not waiting for someone to agree before you believe. The moment you stop needing agreement, you become powerful. Agreement from others is temporary and shallow. True belief is internal and lasting. It is better to walk alone in truth than to stand surrounded by people who cannot see your vision, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity, out of alignment with something higher. This is why the wise speak little and observe much. They do not react quickly. They do not share everything. They live with intention. Every word is chosen. Every silence is deliberate. Because they know the world is responding not to their explanations, but to their assumptions. Not to their noise, but to their state of being. When you remain silent, you can hear your own inner voice more clearly. You can tune into the feeling of the wish fulfilled without distraction. You can dwell in the end quietly, consistently, until it becomes second nature. There is a sacredness in privacy. Your inner world is your temple. What you hold there must be treated with reverence. Not everyone needs to know what you're
I've always had a sweet
taking place inside you. The more you share, the more you risk being pulled into discussion, debate, or defense. And all of that pulls energy away from the creation itself. But when you hold your vision in silence, you keep it intact. You allow it to ripen in its own time. Many people fail to manifest their desires not because they lack belief, but because they expose the seed too soon. They speak about it before it is settled within them. They seek applause before the performance has begun. And when they are met with resistance, skepticism, or misunderstanding, their inner world begins to shake. They doubt what they once believed so strongly. This is why silence is power. It keeps you anchored. It allows your belief to strengthen without interruption. It gives your imagination space to breathe. There is also a great joy in knowing that the world will one day see what you have already seen in silence. What you have lived inwardly will become visible outwardly. And when it does, it will not be because you talked about it. It will be because you became it. You embodied the state, and the state externalized itself. The manifestation will be a reflection of your private communion with your own imagination. You will have created it not through force, but through faith. Not through shouting, but through silent knowing. This is the secret life of the mystic, the artist, the visionary. They live first within. They walk with unseen realities. They dwell in futures no one else believes are possible. And they do it without needing applause. Their satisfaction comes not from recognition, but from alignment, from knowing they are in tune with the deeper laws of life. This is where real fulfillment lives, not in being seen, but in being true to what you know within. So when the desire arises, when the vision comes, when the new reality begins to form in imagination, hold it gently, guard it with silence, speak to it in the quiet language of faith. Let your inner speech be filled with assurance and your outer speech be still. Let your silence be your strength, not because you are hiding, but because you are creating. And creation, when it is real, does not need to be announced. It simply unfolds and the world watches in wonder. The secret of inner speech is the secret of creation itself. What you continually say to yourself in the silence of your mind forms the blueprint of your reality. It is not the spoken word that moves the world, but the unspoken conversation. The constant dialogue running beneath your actions, beneath your personality, beneath what others can see. This inner monologue, this invisible speech is the workshop of your future. It carries with it the essence of belief, of expectation, and of self-concept. You are always talking to yourself. The question is, what are you saying? Most people do not realize that their inner speech is shaping their destiny. They believe their thoughts are harmless or idle. But thought is never idle. It is a seed, and inner speech is the water that gives it life. The words you repeat to yourself about who you are, what life is, what is possible and impossible, form the mold into which life must pour itself. Inner speech is assumption made audible to the self, and what you assume to be true within, you will eventually experience without. When you begin to understand this law, you become highly selective about what you entertain inwardly. You no longer casually say, I can't do that, or that always happens to me, or things never work out. Because now you know that your inner speech is creative. It is not commentary, it is command. It is not observation, it is construction. Your inner dialogue becomes your decree, and life has no choice but to respond in kind. This is why keeping your mouth shut outwardly becomes essential. When you understand the power of inner speech, you stop wasting words on external explanations. You don't need to justify yourself or convince others or explain your process. What you're building is being built in silence. In the hidden chambers of your mind, where your assumptions, beliefs, and repeated phrases are laying down the architecture of your world. The opinions of others hold no power unless you make them part of your inner speech. Their doubts are powerless unless you rehearse them mentally. Their disbelief cannot enter unless you adopt it through your own inner conversations. By claiming control of your inner speech, you begin by listening not to the world but to yourself. You pay attention to what you say when no one is around. Do you speak as the person who has already received the desire? Do you imagine conversations from the end where you are already congratulated, celebrated, fulfilled? Or do you dwell in complaints, in worries, in the repetition of what is not working? This is not about discipline for discipline's sake. It is about aligning your inner speech with the world you want to experience. Because you cannot experience what you have not first accepted inwardly. Inner speech reveals your true beliefs, and belief is the root of manifestation. You may say aloud, I believe I am successful, but if your inner speech is filled with self-criticism, comparison, and doubt, that belief has not taken root. You do not have to shout your desires into existence. You have to whisper them into being with the inherited voices. The phrases you picked up from society, from parents, from past failures, and then you begin to change them. You replace them with new sentences, new assumptions, new declarations of identity. Not once, but again